Good afternoon, colleagues. Today, I invite you to consider how our school defines inclusion. As we prepare for the enrollment of Georgia and his twin brother Luca, who has mild intellectual impairment and type 1 diabetes, I propose that we integrate both students within our mainstream Year 4 classroom and begin transitioning away from the segregated unit. This is not only a pedagogical preference, but it is a legal, ethical, and moral responsibility under Australian and international frameworks. True inclusion upholds every child's right to equitable access and participation on the same basis as peers. 1800s, Australian students with sensory and intellectual impairments were separated from their peers. The normalization movement of the 1970s challenged these practices, leading to integration but not yet true inclusion. Key milestones are 1992 Disability Discrimination Act made disability discrimination unlawful. 1994 UNESCO Salamanca Statement affirmed inclusive education as a global priority. 2005 Disability Standards for Education clarified obligations for consultation and reasonable adjustments. 2008 Conventions of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities Article 24 confirmed inclusive education as a human right. 2020 Alice Springs Declaration recommitted to equity and excellence for all learners. Despite this progress, research shows persistent othering and gatekeeping in Australian schools. Authentic inclusion means transforming attitude, not just placements. Let's take a close look at Luca's profile, because understanding his needs, holistically both cognitive and medical, is essential to making reasonable adjustments rather than default into separation. First, Luca has mild intellectual impairment, which typically presents as an IQ between 55 and 70, and slower rate of concept acquisition. Students in this range often thrive when learning is concrete and visual. Their strengths lie in hands-on model experience, but they can struggle when tasks depend heavily on working memory, abstract reasoning, or language processing. From a teaching perspective, this means Luca will benefit from explicit instructions, consistent scaffolding, visual supports, and frequent opportunities for repetition and mastery. The goal is to consolidate understanding through success experiences, not to remediate what he cannot do yet. Secondly, Luca lives with type 1 diabetes, an autoimmune condition that requires continual blood glucose monitoring, insulin administration, and balanced carbohydrate intake. Periods of hypo or hyperglycemia can temporarily affect his concentration, energy levels, and behavior. In severe cases, it can escalate into a medical emergency requiring immediate intervention. To support him safely, our classroom environment must provide ready access to snacks, hydration, rest spaces, and staff trained in diabetes first aid so that his participation remains uninterrupted and dignified. Flexibility around assessment timing or short breaks during lessons is also part of our legal responsibility for reasonable adjustments under the disability standards of education. When we combine these perspectives, we see that Luca does not need segregation. He needs an environment designed for inclusion, safety, and success on the same basis as his peers. Human rights are inalienable. Article 26 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights and Article 24 of Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities guarantee the right to education without discrimination and based on equal opportunity. Australia's ratification obliges us to act, not merely agree. The Disability Discrimination Act and the Disability Standards for Education embed these principles domestically. Yet, as research reveals, compliance is inconsistent. Many schools still rely on segregated settings rather than systemic. Social justice demands redistribution of resources, recognition of diversity, and participation for all. Closing the unit honors these principles by returning resources and dignity to the shared classroom. As a Catholic learning community, our call to inclusion is not only a policy requirement, it is a moral and spiritual imperative grounded in our faith tradition. Human dignity reminds us that every learner is created in the image of God. Lucas' worth is not diminished by his impairment or medical condition. His full participation honors the sacredness of life and that each child brings unique gifts to our shared learning environment. The common good and solidarity compel us to stand with those who are most vulnerable, to remove barriers, and to build structures that allow all to flourish. Subsidiarity teaches that decisions should be made as close as possible to those affected. In Luca's case, this means truly listening to him and his family and co designing learning pathways that reflect his voice and agency. The preferential option for the poor reminds us to prioritize students who experience social, emotional, or learning disadvantage. Inclusion is an act of compassion and justice. It is not charity. At the heart of this decision are the voices and experience of all stakeholders, beginning with Luca himself. Luca, like every child, wants to learn alongside his brother and his friends. He seeks a sense of belonging, to be part of the same routines, the same playground, and the same classroom conversations. Inclusion also gives him the opportunity to build independence in managing his diabetes, a vital life skill that cannot be learned in isolation with one to one support. His parents and caregivers bring deep expertise in both his learning profile and his medical needs. Research shows that parents often carry the emotional and administrative burden of advocacy. Under Section 3.5 of the Disability Standards for Education, meaningful and ongoing consultation is not optional, it is legal and ethical obligation. When we recognize parents as partners rather than petitioners, we strengthen trust and consistency across home and school. Teachers and allied professionals form the next layer of support. Psychologists, occupational therapists, and diabetes educators bring vital perspectives that help us see the whole child. Working together through the team around the child model prevents siloed practice and ensures that all adjustments are coordinated, not fragmented. And finally, Luca's peers and the wider community also benefit as stakeholders. Inclusive classroom model empathy, respect, and understanding. They challenge stigma and reflect the diversity that children already see in the world beyond school. In this way, inclusion not only a matter of equity, but a shared expression of our community values. Talk about inclusion, we must also talk about how we teach. Two key pedagogical frameworks guide our practice: our universal design for learning and the maker model. Both reflect our responsibility under the disability standards for education to make reasonable adjustments and ensure every learner can participate on the same basis. Universal Design for Learning, developed by Center for Applied Special Technology, is grounded in neuroscience. It recognizes that learners engage, perceive, and express knowledge in different ways. Through multiple means of engagement, we spark curiosity and motivation. For Luca, this might mean offering choice and relevance, allowing him to demonstrate knowledge through hands on and visual tasks connected to his interests. Through multiple means of representations, we ensure that content is accessible. Visual scaffolds, concrete examples, and simplified language structures help Luca to process and retain new concepts. Through multiple means of action and expression, we give Luca option to show what he knows. For example, oral presentations, graphic organizers, or recorded responses in place of long written tasks remove unnecessary barriers without lowering expectations. Alongside UDL, the maker model gives us a practical lens for differentiation, adjusting content, process, product, and environment to build a safe space for risk taking and growth. Applying the dignity of risk means we empower students like Luca to make choices, take responsibility, and experience success through autonomy rather than protection. Differentiation isn't something extra we do, it is the work. As the Australian Professional Standards for Teachers 1.5 reminds us, we differentiate to meet the full range of abilities, and the truth is, small adjustments for one learner almost always benefits the whole class. The process of inclusion is not a single decision. It is a continuous cycle of reflection and collaboration. The inclusive planning cycle captures this process through four key stages: assess, plan, teach, and evaluate. We begin assess, where we gather comprehensive information about Luca, his learning strengths, communication style, motivators, and medical needs. This stage values the whole child, recognizing that his intellectual and health profiles both inform how he learns the best. Next, in planning stage, we collaborate closely with Luca's family, his diabetes educator, and support professionals to set clear, measurable goals aligned with Year 4 curriculum. This ensures that his learning pathways reflects both academic expectations and well-being needs. During teaching, we implement practical strategies, UDL principles, explicit instructions, peer support structures, and routine diabetes management. The aim is to embed inclusion in everyday classroom practice, not as an add-on, but as part of how we teach all students. Question: what Lucas needs take away from other students is one we all have heard at some point. It stems from misunderstanding of what inclusive education really means. Inclusion does not mean unequal attention or lowering expectations. It means designing learning so that every student can access from the outset. Research consistently shows that reasonable adjustments benefit all learners, not just those with disabilities. For example, differentiated planning, guided by frameworks like UDL, improves classroom engagement, reduces behavior disruptions, and lifts overall achievement. When teachers plan collaboratively and use inclusive design principles, they experience less workload pressure over time. By anticipating variability, we reduce the need for reactive intervention and constant one on one fixes later. Closing the unit, therefore, isn't about saving resources. It is about redistributing them equitably. It is about creating a school where every student, including Luca, receives what they need on the same basis as their peers. This is not just a good pedagogy, it is good humanity. By educating Luca alongside Giorgio, we affirm that every child has a rightful place in our shared learning community. Let us move beyond compliance toward genuine commitment, from mere integration to authentic inclusion. Thank you.